Hey, Dario.
What's up? What's up?
What's up, buddy? You're back. You were in Colombia for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, I know it's the infamous bunk bed is behind me once again, and
Woo! Return of the bunk.
happy to be home. But yeah, it was a great trip. Got to see a lot of family, see a lot of really cool scenery too. I mean, Colombia is just gorgeous, and then
Colombia.
you know, trying a lot of great food. Man, I love the food there.
One of my favorite movies growing up was Romancing the Stone. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, I think I saw it a while ago. It's Michael Douglas, right?
And Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner, both in their prime. Ooh, it was good. Ooh, good movie. Good movie. And funny, Danny DeVito in his prime. I mean, it doesn't get any better. That was all around Cartagena. It was always raining in the jungle. I don't think it's that heavily jungled, but it's a pretty lush environment, right?
There are definitely some parts that probably are just as heavily jungled as you see in that movie. I mean, I wasn't there personally on this trip, but there was one hike that we did with one of my cousins that was like, just an hour outside of Bogota, and you're hiking through just like it felt pretty jungly. It was like misty that day, so it was very very mythical vibes.
Ooh.
And
Ooh.
yeah, there's like there's a part of where North America meets South America, like where Panama meets Colombia. There's this basically unpassable jungle that there isn't even a road connecting the two continents. I don't know if you knew that, but there's literally no way to drive to South America because of how impassable this jungle is right on the border of Panama and Colombia. So I think it's very plausible that they were not exaggerating in the movie.
Big geographic facts from Dario Offstein. Big geographic facts. We got to start the show with a hot take. I want to get a hot take from you right away. Give us something that no one else is talking about that is incredibly plausible, has to be plausible, that most would consider hot.
Yeah, so I mean the running back that we're all obsessed with from the two Super Bowl teams this year is Kenny Gainwell, but I'm going to go to the other side of it. I think that Isiah Pacheco has a very real path to being a top 10 running back this season. I mean, if you look at the games that Clyde Edwards-Helaire played in just before he got hurt last season, he was seeing single-digit snap shares, and I think the team has shown that they trust Pacheco, and I just think that we know just how much upside this Kansas City offense has. They still haven't re-signed Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon obviously had some huge games for them down the stretch, but I think the fact they haven't re-signed him shows just how much trust they have in Pacheco. I mean, just like a lot of those rookie running backs who get drafted late, we're a little worried about the potential of him getting Michael Cartered. But if that doesn't happen, I think we're completely wheels up on Isiah Pacheco, and he's a huge value this year. I mean, it's the Chiefs offense. What more do we have to say? He's shown to be more talented than Clyde Edwards-Helaire ever was, frankly. So I think that he's definitely got all types of upside to crush where he's currently being drafted.
I love it, dude. I actually love it.
What's your hot take of the day?
What happens if McKinnon gets hurt?
Yeah, I mean, right now McKinnon's not even on the team, so like
right, McKinnon's not even on the team yet. But let's say they do add a satellite back, and that satellite back gets hurt. Isiah Pacheco is very capable of catching 50 passes in this offense.
Absolutely. I mean, he's had his route participation. I remember we were talking about this on the Stack Fest last year. It was like one more target every week. And even before he played a single NFL snap, I remember the hype videos in the offseason last year where Pacheco making one-handed catches in practice from Mahomes. It's all these things that we know he's capable of. He's obviously got the speed, the physicality already dialed in, and he's going to be their best running back on the ground game from the day the season starts. And I think that he really added an element to that offense that helped them down the stretch last year, because they made it more difficult to just say, we're going to sit back and put a light box against Mahomes and you guys can't run on us, because then they were able to run on guys. I mean, he was a huge contributor to that Super Bowl win. So very, very cool to see.
There's nothing I like better than a 7th round running back who was not necessarily super productive in college, but that's only because he's on a really bad offense. Okay. and he goes to the combine, runs a 4.4, gets drafted by the Chiefs, and then all of a sudden, boom. That's what I love. And did you hear that music?
Yeah, I'm hearing it.
We haven't talked about how I'm going to bring you in. But I think I have an idea. I think I know. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program, the original machine of the underworld. Oh, he has code, but he also has heart. That's right. Here with me today is the brains behind the Breakout Finder, the Injury Finder, the projection, so much of what we do at the underworld. It is Dario Offstein. Talk to me.
That's pretty surreal. I think that's my first real Mind of Mansion welcome. That's pretty special. Happy to be here. And like you said, I think that we just have so much constantly happen. It's hard to, it's pretty amazing that we're even able to keep track of it, but we've just got so many different projects cooking all at once. And it feels like right now we have so many things just bubbling to the surface. And I think that the Player Profiler subscribers have got to be happy right now because we're just pumping out new and awesome projects day in, day out, it feels like.
It's true. And I love pumping you up. That's what I wanted to do today. I was like, I'm gonna pump up Dario. We're gonna get him super pumped today. So I'm happy to have you. This is the perfect time to have you on pre-draft. We've already rolled out the Breakout Finder. We've got the Dynasty rankings up with lifetime values. We've got Bestball rankings with Bestball points added. The season rankings, high stakes rankings, tight end premium. It's all there. The player rankings at playerprofiler.com. And then we have these apps dropping. The Injury Finder app about to drop. So now is the time. Now you have a lot going on in your head, in your brain, a very sophisticated one at that, and a lot of numbers and a lot of actionable information. But before we get to any of that, Russell Clay, friend of the show, Russell Clay, friend of the Breakout Finder, one of the originators of the Breakout Finder. Oftentimes we credit Nate Liss as the founder of the Breakout Finder. He's actually the co-founder of the Breakout Finder with Russell Clay. They invented it together, right? So that was a big deal, and we've certainly awarded Russell Clay both credit and a monetary compensation for the Breakout Finder, and I think he's just happy to see it out there in the wild and so successful, right? Downloaded so many times. Go to the App Store, download it, just type in Breakout Finder. It's right there. Now, Tua was just addressing the media and said something interesting. Very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. He was debating retiring this offseason and then talking to his family came to the conclusion that, shockingly, with millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars at stake, he's going to play football.
Yeah, that's I think it's not shocking to hear. I mean, those were some very scary head injuries that he was enduring this season. Right? I mean, that was probably the biggest criticism the NFL faced this season. Actually, yes. I mean, the Damar Hamlin situation happened too, but
great point.
There was
the Hamlin was worse. Hamlin was more egregious, but
before that
Tua
happened,
situation
it was the Tua situation that was making all the headlines, and how the NFL, I mean, the concussion protocol was changed this on the fly last season because of how the Dolphins handled the Tua situation. So that's, pretty severe. And I think we've seen all the research about just like head trauma, CTE, and I think that I mean, it's totally reasonable from a player's perspective to really weigh the pros and cons. But like you said, millions of dollars do speak pretty loud. And I think that, I'm obviously rooting for him and for his health. So we'll just hope that we can see the best version of Tua out there on the field this season.
Yeah, believe he's going to be fine. Right? We've had players with multiple concussions. Think about Brandon Cooks.
Yeah,
Brandon Cooks' career was in jeopardy with New England. He took that huge hit in the Super Bowl, knocked him out of the Super Bowl. Like, can this guy continue? He hasn't had a concussion since that we know of that's been reported.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very possible that it's just by circumstance and just random chance that no concussions in 2023, and Tua Tagovailoa is incredibly productive. I know that when he was playing last year, we wanted to stack him. He was the double stack darling of DFS last year for good reason. However, if you are looking for Tua on our dynasty rankings, and this has been true for months, you have to keep scrolling. He's in the back half of the QB2 tier, which is interesting. I think a lot of people are like, wait, it doesn't make sense. Like, how do you not have more confidence in Tua than you do, say, Daniel Jones? Mm-hmm. And I think Daniel Jones and Tua, when you look at where they sit on the dynasty rankings, it is very machine. It is very Dario. It's clear. No, it's clear your influence in the mechanisms behind the scenes that drive so much of what we do at PlayerProfiler.com, because you look at a Daniel Jones and his brand is pretty tired, right? Yes, he's coming back and he had a career year, but there's no weapons there. He's been disappointing most seasons. Whereas Tua, he's from Alabama, and he's finally gotten a chance, and he has all these weapons, and he had a career year, but not coming off a string of underwhelming seasons like Daniel Jones did. So just on perception, certainly Tua feels like he has more upside, feels like a sexier asset for Dynasty, and then you look up and their lifetime value ratings on Player Profiler are almost equal. And this is what happens so often with our rankings, is that you look at them and you're like, oh, that's not what I was hoping for. I was hoping that this thing would tell me like an exciting,
what you want to
hopeful
hear. Yeah.
story about a player, and I could go and I could trade for him with confidence. And it just doesn't. A lot of times it doesn't. A lot of times it's cold, cool, clinical realism, which is what you bring to the table and what protects so many people that subscribe to our ranking services from making bad decisions. One of the reasons why Tua has been sitting behind Daniel Jones is something called an uncertainty quotient, right? And that's a part of our dynasty lifetime value generation process.
For sure. Yeah, no, I think that you said it perfectly. The uncertainty with Tua is so much higher. I mean, Daniel Jones, especially having just gotten paid by the Giants, I think that the best case for Jones is not as great as the best case for Tua, and it's not particularly close. But I think especially in super flex leagues where you want to keep those two quarterbacks who are able to give you points week in and week out, right now, Daniel Jones does have a little bit more of a safety net than Tua, for sure.
Absolutely. And you look at their ADP in single quarterback leagues, Tua's going at player 114, Daniel Jones at player 140. There you're seeing the sentiment right there. And yet when I look at the numbers, I see two guys that are 25 years old. I see two guys that were drafted one slot away, both at 18.4 fantasy points a game last year. These look like identical assets. If anything, just based on the numbers, that Tua would go down. He would be even further away from Daniel Jones, but we also have something called a profile bonus, and there is more hope for continued improvement with Tua than there is for Daniel Jones to repeat and exceed a career year with his supporting cast versus Tua. But also, we have 3-year projections, right? So we now project out 3 years. We certainly have our 1-year projections, our 2023 projections power many of our other rankings. The seasonal rankings, the tight end premium rankings, the best ball rankings are driven primarily by our 2023 projections. But now we've developed 3-year projections. And that is actually what is buoying Tua. He'd be even lower if not for the 3-year projections because the uncertainty is higher with him than Daniel Jones, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, just having it in front of me right now, we have about 2 more points per season of value that Tua has over Jones in the future projections. I mean, this is like, these are assuming a player plays, right? Like if Tua decided to retire tomorrow, obviously his 3-year projection would crater pretty significantly. But this is something that we've actually factored in. We looked at over 20 years of data. We looked at the key stats for each position in terms of projecting value across multiple seasons. We looked at age curves. And so we have this complex formula that's also being guided by our 2023 projections because, the best thing we know right now is what we know right now. So we take all of that, you factor it in, and then that's what you've got for 3 years worth of projections. We also do like a confidence weighting. So we're more confident for this season than we are for 2025. So it's not just a simple average of those 3 years that makes it into the dynasty rankings, but we also get like a slightly heavier weight on this year, then a little bit lighter for the next year, a little bit lighter for the year after that.
How have the projections improved for 2023 versus 2022? So you mentioned that the 2023 projections are the most important. Of course they are. Of course they are. They're the most important for Dynasty and for every format. When you look back at 2022, where do you think we improved the most?
I think right now, I can say for certain that our seasonal projection process is much more. I think we're looking at the right stats more clearly. We're looking at these very nuanced. We created basically an expected efficiency for every player based on their career up to this point. So every running back's yards per carry, every receiver's target catch rate, all these things are being like automatically pulled in based on the player's history, and then we adjust that based on any changes in situation that we're seeing. So, for example, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, their touchdown rates are going to plummet now that Tom Brady is gone. So we have, Billy has helped hugely, I think, with improving this process and we basically fused together 2 projection systems that were already both elite, taking the best of both worlds, making it even more efficient. And then we're kind of just, I think, having the best projections that are out there, frankly.
Holy shit. I was supposed to be running the show and I didn't even know all that. Okay, that sounds amazing. So it's fun work? You like working with Billy?
Yeah, it's been good. There's definitely some players that we're not seeing totally eye to eye on, but I think overall there's just like 2 perspectives are better than one. Keeping my head around all of these projections alone last year versus having another person's input and then being able to bounce ideas off of each other, kind of talk through so many situations, seeing where we agree, which is, probably 90% of places, and then fine tuning where we disagree, I think is, it's a really valuable exercise for sure.
Who are the guys that you 2 disagree with the most?
So there's one guy that he likes more that I still haven't been able to kind of fully get behind where he has him ranked, and that's CeeDee Lamb. He has him ahead of Davante Adams. I think it's just a little bit aggressive. If you look at ADPs, like right now, CeeDee Lamb is, I think, the wide receiver 8 on Underdog, and Billy thinks he's going to be the wide receiver 3 this year. I just can't get behind it. I think that there's still going to be target competition in Dallas. Michael Gallup's healthier. Brandon Cooks went there for, I think, was it like 20 million? And then on top of that, you just have Davante Adams, who's been by far, I think, the best receiver in the game for the last 3 years. If you look at that window as a whole, I think he's getting a little too spooked by Jimmy Garoppolo. There it is. Yes, man versus machine. If you guys are not tuning in to these debates between me and Billy, we're going to have the next episode coming out tomorrow, and it is absolutely very much you get there with it is very much, I think, one of the top shows right now on the Underworld network. We're going through our 2023 projections, talking about every aspect of these guys we disagree on. And yeah, CeeDee Lamb is one that I haven't been able to agree with him on, but I think he has changed my mind a little bit on Darren Waller, because there's just so much uncertainty in that Giants offense. He's still an athletic freak. And then I think the thing that comes to mind for me always with tight ends is we have so much optimism this time of year for like some like 15 or 20 tight ends about how they could get there and who's going to break out and who's going to have more opportunity than they've ever seen. But then when the season rolls around, you have like 3 tight ends you feel good about having in your lineup, and everyone else is a disaster. And Darren Waller has shown the ability to be that kind of difference maker before, and he's going to have some windows in this offense. So I think that I was perhaps, my gut instinct on him was a little down because of last season, but I think that, you know how it is. We can't overreact to 1 year's worth of injuries, and he's still a very talented player.
On this logo for Man versus Machine that we have up on the screen here, did you notice that the wavelength that's going between the 2 antenna on the robot is a football?
Oh, I did not notice that.
Did you notice
pretty
that?
Clever.
Huh? Isn't that wild? That's John Gibbs. John Gibbs helped us with design. That's deep. Like I told him that I wanted a Mortal Kombat feel. What do you think? He delivered.
Yeah, that's pretty. I mean, I definitely can see the resemblance of the man being Billy with that beard, but I had not noticed the little football there. That's pretty clever.
Football. Football. So yes, if you like Dario and you want to get into how these projections, how the sausage is made, and hear him debate Billy on a number of players every week. That's the Man versus Machine show. What days those typically drop on YouTube? Is that a Wednesday show?
Yeah, it's a Wednesday show. The only reason we're doing it tomorrow this week is because I was coming on here, and then I also, was on a plane for most of yesterday, so I have a, tight week already, and I can't believe it's Wednesday. It's like, damn, we got so much more to do.
And with all of our shows, you can subscribe. By the way, someone just went like this. Someone hit the down. Someone just thumbs down. Is that because they think that we're promoting other shows? Like that's a big deal? No, the whole point of this is to tell people that if you're listening to the podcast in particular, you can subscribe to individual podcasts. So you can subscribe just to Mind of Mansion, Sonic Truth, Man vs. Machine, Futurecast. Those are available to be subscribed to as individual shows, or you can subscribe to the Player Profiler podcast network and get all the shows, and we can come up with like about one show a day. So you have that kind of flexibility. So that's something to talk about, something that's actually actionable, not to be thumbs downed. Everyone that likes the show, let's go ahead and offset this with a thumbs up. We'll do a thumbs up. If you like the show, no matter if you're listening on a podcast, if you're listening on YouTube, wherever you're listening, thumbs up, whatever it is. Just offset the crazy, insane thumbs down at one of the dumber moments to we've had some thumbs down moments, okay? We've certainly had thumbs down moments in the show. Buzzard. That wasn't one of them, okay? Get out of here. In fact, I hope that you leave. I hope you turn the show off. Hit the X, right? Wherever you're listening, hit the X and get out of the episode and go somewhere else because you don't get the show. Shame on you. Let's talk about your guys because we have our guys. I have my guys. Billy has his guys. We have 3 my guys. If there's a staff profile section on Player Profiler now, and you can see everybody's guys, right? You mentioned one of my guys is Kenny Gainwell. Who are your guys?
So this is kind of a fluid situation. I think that my guys right now I know T. Higgins is one of them. I just love those receivers that are basically an alpha who is a 1B in his offense. I think those guys are all kind of a little bit undervalued because we worry about the target share that the other guy is going to eat up, but we still see massive games from the T. Higgins, Devontae Smiths, Jalen Waddles of the world. Like, to me, those 3 guys are kind of in that sort of in that bucket. And then I think that Sky Moore is another one of my guys right now. He's someone who
Oh my God, another thumbs down. We have to double that. More thumbs up. Another thumbs down. No, thumbs up. No, someone took the thumbs down away. No, I think the person who did thumbs down actually meant to be thumbs up. So I take that back. I take that back. It's been taken away. There's still only one thumbs down. More thumbs ups coming in. Thank you, everybody, for the thumbs up.
This is great. We got to keep that ratio up for sure.
Freaking out, man, about thumbs down. Hate thumbs down. But
I'll hail the algorithm,
up, man.
And then, yeah, my last guy right now is Dallas Goedert. I think that he's just a total stud. I mean, he's very much. I remember when they finally traded Zach Ertz away, and he really stepped up that season. Last season, he's I think similar to T. Higgins, he's in a crowded offense where you worry about the targets going to the other guys. But if you look at the most important efficiency stats for tight ends, Dallas Goedert is always near the top of those leaderboards. I mean,
you know who he's ahead of always? You know who he's always ahead of?
Who?
Theo Greminger's favorite tight end at the moment. A polarizing player in the underworld, because we do not let the opportunity wag the dog. We talked about this with Rich Rebar. You have to start with players being super efficient, at least demonstrating it at some point, and then being able to explain why they're not. But if they've never been efficient, then you need to let them prove that they are. Dallas Goedert has only been efficient, and he can only go up as opportunity arrives. Brown and Devontae Smith were as healthy as any wide receiver duo in the league last year. They will likely miss more games this year than they did last year. And that means more targets for Dallas Goedert. I love that you appreciate the law of the conservation of targets. It's one of the reasons why you're not as bullish on a CeeDee Lamb. Because hey, listen, Brandon Cooks is going to command some targets. Michael Gallup is healthier. So it's not necessarily true that CeeDee Lamb's going to come in and be an even more alpha-E guy this year. So I appreciate how you don't let the enthusiasm, the bullish enthusiasm of one of these players that's in their prime, on an offense, that's surging, and everything is clicking together. You're like, yes, let's get excited. Let's just not quite get to like Justin Jefferson level until we see something much more in the efficiency categories. And the same would be true for TJ Hockenson. Right? So TJ Hockenson is, an order of magnitude higher on the dynasty rankings than Dallas Goedert, right? He's in the next tier up. That's also because he's like 2.5 years younger. And because the opportunity is so great for him, his 2023 projection is necessarily higher. But I'm not sure that he's better than Dallas Goedert. In fact, what we've seen to this point is Goddard's better, right?
Yeah, I think in terms of just pure talent, I would say Goddard's the better player for sure. I think that you talk about the target share. I think another thing to keep in mind is the Eagles had the best game script that any team could ever dream of having last season. They were consistently blowing people out, and that leads to more running, less passing. That's an obvious thing we all know about football. So I think that even if Brown,
Miles
Smith
Sanders
both,
in for a wake-up call this year, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he already got the wake-up call at the end of the season
best
and the
offensive line in
playoffs.
the
He got the
league.
wake-up call named Kenny Gainwell. He had a wake-up call. But he's going to get a new kind of wake-up call this year, which is when your team's losing, they're not going to be handing it off. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and I mean, running behind that Eagles offensive line, sharing a backfield with Jalen Hurts, those are very, very nice just things to have going for you, and he's going to be in a very different situation for sure.
Now, are you in agreement with Billy with TJ Hockenson, or is there any disagreement there?
Yeah, I was going to say, let me give you more about Hockenson. The thing that kind of worries me is I look at targets per route run as one of the fundamental stats for understanding how good a player is, how good the role we can project them to have in their offense. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, as a rookie, had a higher targets per route run than TJ Hockenson has had any year of his career. And then last year, Amon-Ra St. Brown stepped it up even more to, I think it was like 32%. He was top 5 in the entire league. So you already have one guy who's going to clearly command targets ahead of Hockenson. And then I think that, oh my God, for a split second there, I forgot that he was on the Vikings. But I still think that even though there's going to be more opportunity there, like you said, the efficiency is
that Miles Sanders is now on the Panthers, right? He's on the Panthers?
Yes.
So
yes.
we had Senior Football. Senior Football came in over the top, and he said the Panthers had some good running lanes for Foreman. I think he was another thumbs down. So we need more thumbs up now. It's an arms race of thumbs up and thumbs up. It's really a hand race, right? It's a hand race between the thumbs up and the thumbs down.
Right, because you can do a thumbs up without your whole arm.
I'm very much on team thumbs up, not thumbs down. So, but I think Senior Football had a thumbs down because he believes that the running lanes in Carolina were wide for Foreman, and that's true. They do have a quality run blocking offensive line, but what we're saying is that in Dynasty, efficiency matters more. Demonstrating that you are an above average player at your position is very important when you're valuing a guy out 3 years when things can change. Offensive lines change, systems change, all these things change. Schedule, everything else can change. So you want to start with, is this player good or bad in Dynasty? In a seasonal context, you're much more interested in, okay, what's this player's opportunity heading into this year? And even if we believe that Miles Sanders will still be an equivalently efficient runner behind a quality offensive line, if they're not running the ball, what good is it? So what? How many different games did Dante Foreman help you in fantasy last year? Wide running lanes or not? What are you talking about? They're not going to score touchdowns, and they're going to be playing from behind. And Miles Sanders has proven over a number of years that his reception total as a rookie was a mirage.
Unfortunately, yes.
They just don't get it, man. Some people, they don't get it. They don't understand just how much opportunity drives the next year's projection. I think Dallas Goedert is a better player on a better team. But because TJ Hockenson is in an opportunity-rich situation in Minnesota, what do you think's going to happen? He's probably going to score more fantasy points, even though he's not as good.
Mm-hmm.
And the gap between Goedert and Hockenson in seasonal leagues is wide. And in Dynasty, it converges. It's much lower.
And then also, you can't ignore the age factor, right? 3 years of a difference is huge when you're talking Dynasty, no matter what position, even though tight ends do tend to age a little more gracefully than running backs and receivers. I think it's hard to ignore the fact that, like you said, Hockenson does have a 3-year advantage on Goedert.
Fantasy Football Garage reminds us the Panthers have 3 picks in rounds 3 and 4, which is the range when Tajay Spears should be going off the board. Tajay Spears to the Panthers. I like that a lot.
That's very exciting.
That'd be bad for Chuba Hubbard, but that would be a nice spot for Tajay Spears. You want a young running back to land in a place that has a good offensive line, does not have another satellite back to compete with. Though Chuba is an all-purpose back, Spears immediately would slot in as the number 2 and the starter and the go-to running back in passing situations. That's interesting to me. That's pretty fascinating. The idea that they would ideally go with Spears. You don't want them going Eric Gray or someone like that who's not fast enough, not big and fast enough to really move the needle. He's just not good enough, right? Like the dynasty ranking on Eric Gray completely cratered. Like the rug was pulled out from under him.
Yeah.
And that's just because it's sad but true, right? When you look at the Breakout Finder and what drives breakouts, if you're going to be day 3 and you're sub 210 pounds and you're running a 4.65, it's not happening, right? We have so few examples of successes in that range of comparables where there are so many flameouts, so many guys that you wouldn't even remember. That's the thing. Like when you look at the Breakout Finder database and you go back through time, all these guys that were drafted, right? Especially in the 3rd round that we don't even remember. Like that guy was drafted? Like, oh yeah, that guy was a 4th round pick. That guy was a 4th round pick? Yeah. Yeah, he was. And see, we don't remember these guys. They wash out so quickly. You just don't remember. And then when you stack up all the comps, and you're like, whoa, the probability that Eric Gray breaks out is so low. It's crazy. Just because of all these guys that had similar profiles that could not get off the ground because if you think about it, when they landed an NFL team, it makes sense. How are they as rookies without opportunity initially, even in practice, right? They're not getting the reps with the first team in practice. So they've got to flash in a very small window of time during camp in order to earn more opportunities. It's incredibly difficult. And when you run a 4.65, you don't have the size, you're getting blown up in pass protection. It's easier to actually fail. It's easier to look bad in practice than it is to look good. So it makes sense those guys would wash out, where a guy like Spears is going to make a guy miss. He's going to blow past somebody, and the coaches are going to be like, oh, okay. Ooh, look at this. Ooh. Maybe we'll give him a few more reps. Right? Mm-hmm. So in real life, it also just makes sense. Right? And then we were at the Senior Bowl. Same thing was happening. Like, Eric Gray wasn't moving the needle. No one was looking up going, oh, did you see Eric Gray? Like, he was good, not great in some drills, and he was getting blown up in other drills, like pass pro. And I was like waiting. I was like, this Eric Gray guy I heard was super exciting, but Spears is doing the things I heard Eric Gray was going to do. So I think I just like Spears. But I'm open. Like, I'm open to a guy like Chase Brown being athletic, seeing his athleticism expectations. I'm open to it, right? And then sure enough, that's what happened. Like, it was Gray up here and Brown down here. Then after the combine, whoosh, right? You wouldn't see that with wide receivers because wide receiver athleticism doesn't drive probability of breakouts as much as running back athleticism, right?
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, wide receivers, you're looking at things like their dominator rating, their target share, yards per team, pass attempt, their efficiency in college translates a lot better to the NFL game. And we know that running back is just a much more opportunity-driven position. So it's just like even harder to predict on that level. Draft capital comes in and plays an even, by far the strongest effect because teams give into their sunk cost fallacies and then continue to give touches to guys that they drafted in the 1st or 2nd round. So those are all kind of variables that lead to just how we look at these prospects, comparing running backs and receivers.
Now, when you look at the Breakout Finder stats specifically, so on the Breakout Finder, there are unique statistics like dynamic score and teammate score and level of competition. By the way, those stats are also available in data analysis. So if you subscribe to data analysis on Player Profiler, you can download all that. It's all there. But it's also in the Breakout Finder app. When you look at some of those stats, which did you find most interesting and most predictive for any given position?
I mean, I personally find the teammate score really interesting. I like the formula that we've come up with for assessing which games they shared the field with other elite prospects. And I mean, we've seen these clusters of talent come together, right? You think about the Ohio State wide receiver room in recent years, that group of Alabama wide receivers that included Waddle, Devontae Smith, just all these guys who a lot of times, I mean, even if you think back to a guy like Alvin Kamara, who gets a little bit buried in college, but then absolutely explodes in the NFL. Roshan Johnson this year, I think, we're all very high on him and hoping that he sees more opportunity in the NFL than he saw in college. So I personally find the teammate scores extremely interesting. And then in terms of predictive value, I mean, like I said, draft capital drives everything. Breakout age is absolutely huge. And you don't even, I mean, you obviously should go download the Breakout Finder, but you can find the breakout age on our player pages. So breakout age is a great data point for understanding which prospects have the best chance of succeeding in the NFL too. And then I really like looking at the target share for running backs. We know that targets in the NFL lead to way more fantasy points than carries. So being able to catch passes as a running back, earn targets, hugely valuable.
So the reason we launched the Breakout Finder is because we had so many questions from users like, hey, you have all these stats, but how do I decode them all? Do you have like one master metric for me to figure out if this prospect is going to break out or not? And I said, well, we don't have that now, but we could. We could create something called like a breakout rating, I guess. So that's why we did it. That's it. Have you seen the Breakout Finder ad that I did?
I think so. Is it maybe? Is it in StreamYard these days? I might not have seen it yet, actually.
You should check it. Well, you can check it out right now. I can play it for you. You want to see it?
Yeah, let's do it.
I want you to assess this ad, and I also want when I show this, I also want you. It's a promotion, really. It's not really an ad. It's a promotion. I want you to keep in mind that I specifically requested that Cody play this on the Futurecast when he was interviewing Nate. Just think about Nate watching this on the Futurecast with Cody. Check it out. Oh, hey, it's a Mr. Breakout Finder coming at you. The Breakout Finder features 3 key tools. A database of metrics that include speed score, college dominator, breakout age, but also Breakout Finder only stats like dynamic score, level of competition, teammate score. All of these things are part of the overall Breakout Finder algorithm that pinpoints the probability that a player will break out. Everyone's talking about my model does this and my model does that. Well, we give you the data points that go into the model. We have a feature that lets you compare players, and then we give you the precise probability of every wide receiver, every running back, sorted and filterable by class year. So when I'm talking to my friends and I need to show them why I'm so bullish on Player X, I pull out the Breakout Finder and bam, there he is. So go to the App Store, go to Google Play. It's $5 to get the Breakout Finder, and then a couple extra bucks to get some of these additional enhanced stats. Go download it and thank me later. How'd I do?
Pretty good. I think the promotion is pretty excellent. I think I'm sure that Nate must have been very amused when you called yourself Mr. Breakout Finder.
Thank you. You caught that. Oh, I'm so glad you caught that. I'm glad. Thank you. You caught that. Cody caught it right away. He's like, oh no. And then you caught that too. Yeah. Listen. It's an ongoing bit that we're trolling Nate on. That's the thing we're going to be doing. And if I'm sorry if you don't like it, it's okay. All right. So I'm looking at you. I have about 10 more questions for you. Okay. So 10 more questions, 10 burning questions coming up. A lot of them about the Breakout Finder, a lot of them about Bestball and Underdog. And so let's actually hear from Underdog or about Underdog before we get into that. Let's take a moment to talk about Underdog Fantasy. Now, many of you have already signed up. Thousands have signed up from PlayerProfiler already over the years. Underdog has supported us since 2020. Much of what you see on PlayerProfiler is because of Underdog, because of their support. Get the Underdog app, plug in that promo code Underworld, and they're making the NBA fun. Their NBA pick'ems, it's changed my Wednesday night. It's changed my Sunday afternoon. I used to play Underdog just for the best ball drafts. I mean, the best ball drafts are amazing. These draft rooms fill so quickly, and you can win life-changing money. You want to take advantage of all the sleepers we talk about on this show? Well, what better place than in an Underdog draft room to do that? And I recommend taking your Underdog play to the next level by diving into their NFL pick'ems. It's important to correlate those NFL pick'ems. You can pick both the quarterbacks and the wide receivers to exceed expectations. Correlate them, and you can 5x your payout. Bada bing, bada boom. Underdog Fantasy, the promo code is Underworld for an instant deposit match up to $100. Underdog is the truest friend of the Underworld.
I love that little sparkle that follows the promo code across the screen. That's
Yes.
very.
So which promo did you like better, the Underdog one or the Breakout Finder?
I think I have to say the Breakout Finder one. I'm a little biased because it's our product, but I think that the fact that that I like the screen recordings that were moving with the on the promo on the ad, and then I think that you were I mean, it's hard for me to get invested in basketball. I'm looking at a screenshot of Giannis. I'd rather be looking at a screenshot of Jackson, to be honest with you.
Shh! Spoiler alert! JMZ555 in the chat is he's giving away breakout ratings. This guy's giving away breakout ratings. Someone say, "Hey, can I have a..." Jeremy Clark was in the chat saying, "Hey, can I have a Breakout Finder sneak peek?" Well, we did. We gave you a bunch of sneak peeks. We gave you a sneak peek of Bijan, of Roshan. You get a sneak peek of Jackson Smith and Jigba. And now this guy's in the chat giving away Ronnie Bell's breakout rating. Ronnie Bell's breakout rating is 2.6.
We should remind folks that breakout ratings are on a scale of 0 to 100. Maybe 2.6 would make you think it's 1 to 10.
Yep. So, and by the way, it's a 2.6% chance of having a season with 200 fantasy points or 1,000 all-purpose yards. So if you get to 1,000 yards somehow, some way as a running back or receiver, or you put up 200 fantasy points, that's a breakout. Otherwise, it's not a breakout. And it's possible. It's possible that Ronnie Bell, and basically when you think about how an algorithm or how a model would determine a probability, it's going through all the iterations of players from the last 25 years that look like Ronnie Bell in some way, shape, or form, and tagging those players with a probability. Okay, you were drafted in this round with this athletic profile, this college production, and it's granular college production. It's like, this is what you did as a freshman. This is what you did as a sophomore. When did you declare for the draft? Are you an early declare or not? So we look at all those data points. 2.6% chance is incredibly low, very low. There's not many players that are lower.
That would be true.
Sorry, Ronnie. I mean, I'm sure Ronnie's a fantastic guy, right? I'm sure he's done kindnesses for his friends and family. Has a good, I'm sure he has good intentions for what he wants to do with his life. I just don't think a long-term career in the NFL is where that's going to end up. I just don't. These are the numbers. It's cold. It's like Dario. Dario's cold and cool and clinical. That's the Breakout Finder, man. It is. It's just there's you can't hide. You can't hide from it. Now, of the running backs, which of the running backs do you believe had the most surprising breakout rating that kind of made you question the wisdom that you had about that player? Like, wait a second, maybe I'm wrong about this guy. The Breakout Finder disagrees with what I was assuming it would say.
So, at running back, that guy is Deuce Vaughn. The Breakout Finder kind of doesn't really have many comps for him at all, right? I mean, he's a guy who's 5'5", 179, not particularly fast. So his athletic profile really doesn't jump out at you. But then if you look at his college production, it was completely insane at Kansas State. He was involved in the passing game. He broke out when he was only 19 years old. So he's one of those guys that the Breakout Finder kind of doesn't know what to do with. And overall, it really likes those production metrics. I mean, I'm not going to give away Deuce Vaughn's breakout rating, but I think it's a little bit higher than what you might expect.
And the breakout ratings do factor into our dynasty rankings. If anyone's wondering why Deuce Vaughn is ranked where he is, we have him at RB 61 right now. And that's higher than most people because I don't think anyone thinks Deuce Vaughn's going in day 2. So he's going to end up being a day 3 pick, severely undersized. And yet we have him ahead of veterans like Devin Singletary. We have him ahead of a bunch of rookies like Chase Brown. There's a world where this guy is the next Darren Sproles. It's unlikely. Darren Sproles was a monster. Sproles was a monster. Both Kansas State, which I loved. They both went to Kansas State. It's like the most undersized, good running back haven school of all time. That's the best way I could say that without using the word midget. I would never do that. I would never call it a midget school. It's not a midget school. I don't use that. That would be impolite. We don't use that terminology anymore. That's absolutely disrespectful. So I was being respectful all the way with how I was describing that. I think I did a good job. I don't, fashion myself as someone that just throws midget around. That's not what I'm not going to say it, right? I'm not going to say, I'm just going to go, oh, that's a midget school. He's a midget back. No way. No, it's a place where it just so happens that superstar, severely undersized, right? That's a much better way of saying than midget, right?
It's better. I'll give you that.
Yeah, severely undersized, not a midget. Everybody, I know they're in the chat like, hey, you said it. I didn't say it. I said I'm not going to say it. You can't say you're not going to say it and say that's what you're not saying, and you say something else, which is what I am saying, and then say, oh, that's what you said. That's not fair. That's disingenuous. Anyone that's in the chat saying I said midget, that's not correct. I did not say it. Did you hear me say it? I didn't say it. I said I didn't say it.
You've convinced me.
But the Breakout Finder is driving Deuce Vaughn's ranking where I actually want to get a little bit of Deuce Vaughn in rookie drafts. That's a great guy to dabble on because we don't have comps, and to just dismiss him because he falls below commonly held thresholds would be a mistake, right? Mm-hmm. It's not anything close to the same conversation, but take Jackson Smith-Njigba on the highest end at the wide receiver position. It used to be that a player that looked like Jackson Smith-Njigba was categorized as a slot receiver. And slot receivers have a limited ceiling, and they don't go in the first round. And now times have changed. The NFL has changed where Jackson Smith-Njigba is no longer at the bottom tier of size. And players that look like Jackson Smith-Njigba are routinely finishing in the top 10 fantasy producers.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, for all we know, 5 years from now, every one of the stud running backs is going to be Deuce Vaughn size.
Well, slow down. Slow down. Come on, man.
But no, I think that like we said, I totally agree with you. He's definitely someone to just dabble on in your rookie drafts, get him in that 3rd, 4th round. And I mean, I remember Darren Sproles on the Saints. Those were some very exciting fantasy seasons.
Just for the record, though, he ain't Darren Sproles.
It's
Darren
unlikely.
Sproles was such a monster on both special teams and as a running back. Go compare the Darren Sproles production to Deuce Vaughn, and it's mind-blowing what Darren Sproles... I mean, Darren Sproles is up there among college running backs all time with like a Barry Sanders. He's not that. But in this class, right, Deuce Vaughn is similar to what Wandale Robinson was to wide receivers last year. Wandale Robinson had no comps. Wandale Robinson was in an offense that revolved around him. He was very gadgety, very versatile, and the Breakout Finder really liked him, though he didn't hit a bunch of key thresholds. And this is essentially a similar situation, but at running back with Deuce Vaughn this year. Now, when you look at wide receivers, who was most surprising among that group?
For me, that would be Rashee Rice. Like, his profile really stands out. He's above average athleticism, 96th percentile college target share. So he's got a lot of indicators that the Breakout Finder really likes. His breakout age is pretty close to middle of the pack, but again, when everything else is strong, that's not going to hold you back from a very solid breakout rating. So he's someone, like some of the guys that he's ahead of, you would definitely kind of look at it, squint a little bit, and then really have to go back to the player pages and look at why this is happening. But I think that there's definitely
I know why it's happening. Can I give it away why it's happening?
Give it away.
It's given away because the guy has prototypical size, right? 6'2", 6'2", with well above average athleticism. Like, he was number 20 among 73 receivers in this class. You take a nice athletic profile and you put a guy 200 pounds is now huge. Yeah. That's why.
Especially in this class.
Yeah, he's got an 86th percentile catch radius because he also has long arms. Physically, he's imposing, and he was a big-time producer at SMU. That's why. They're just precious few. It's one of the reasons why, we like some of these receivers in this class that aren't necessarily the mega producers, but they have the size. I'm thinking of Mingo. I'm thinking of Michael Wilson. And I'm thinking of Rashee Rice. These are guys we've been relatively bullish on. We have Rice and Mingo in around the same tier. And one of the reasons why is, hey, these guys have size that just isn't available to teams in this class. And that may be what gets them drafted in the second round or the third round as opposed to the fourth or fifth round where they might have been drafted in a different class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the NFL's definitely changing. Like you said, the Jackson Smith and Jigba types. I mean, we've seen Devontae Smith 10 years ago would not have been a first-round pick. So I think it's, part of the new status quo.
What about Jordan Addison? Jordan Addison is showing up ahead of Jackson Smith and Jigba in a number of mocks. There are NFL teams that have him rated higher than Jackson Smith and Jigba. You are a USC grad. Jordan Addison transferred there from Pitt. And if you go back and you watch Kenny Pickett tape, all you want to end up seeing is more Addison. Rich Rebar talked about this. You go back and watch Kenny Pickett, all you're thinking is, oh my God, Jordan Addison's amazing. So he looks like he could be the Devontae Smith from this class. What is the probability that he ends up being the best receiver in this class, not JSN?
I mean, he's a really refined route runner. That's like totally how kind of what you lead with defining his game. I know that his 40 time at his weight is not very good. If you look at his speed score, it's 19th percentile, coming in at 173 at the combine. That's definitely gonna raise some red flags for some teams. But I think that he's able to win on those deeper routes down the field. He's really fluid in his hips. And then I think that also something people have to keep in mind is his, he won the Biletnikoff at Pitt, transferred to USC. Expectations were sky high. He dealt with some injuries last year. And then even in games where he was healthy, I remember you'd be watching USC games and it was like, wait, why isn't Jordan Addison on the field right now? Like, he wasn't running a route on every pass play. I think that part of that was them maintaining his health over the course of the season. I think early on in the season, he also, was still a new transfer, kind of getting adapted to that offense of Lincoln Riley. So I think that there are some indicators from last season at USC that might be a little bit misleading. Like his target share was higher in 2021. Obviously, all of his counting stats were better in 2021. So, I mean, he's kind of one of those prospects where if he could have declared after his sophomore year, we'd be talking about him much more highly than we are now because of just the way things shook out.
Yeah, I think that Addison is another one of those players. Addison and Jackson Smith-Njigba are the new prototypes for NFL receivers. And the idea that both these guys would go first round, like last year, Jahan Dotson going first round, that was surprising to me because I was like, yeah, I get it. But I mean, this guy looks like a slot receiver in the NFL, but it's shifting so quickly. I was like, yes, okay, Devontae Smith, okay, that he was the Heisman Trophy, but now we get past these small, slower receivers where they specialize in running routes, whether it be Smith, whether it be Judy, and now we're on to Dotson, and now they're taking over. I mean, it really is. It's shifting very dramatically, and I talked about this on the Mind of Mansion show in the last monologue of how you're seeing the size shift in receivers, especially in the last 3 years, has been dramatic.
Totally.
Now, looking beyond rookies and just looking at the dynasty rankings, because you've been deep in the dynasty rankings for a long time, at least 2 or 3 months. I know it's been something you've been spending a lot of time with. Give us a few hidden gems for dynasty, guys you think are the hidden values where the 3-year projection is more bullish on a player than, and you're not allowed to say David Montgomery, because I know that the 3-year projection really likes David Montgomery. We know that already. Give us one quarterback, one running back, one receiver, one tight end. You can't say David Montgomery.
All right, so I'll start at running back. I got 2 for you. I think that people should really buy the injury discount that you can still get on Breece Hall and J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins, in those last few games last year, was completely back. His yards per carry was totally himself. I think that there's still concerns with the offense, but especially if Lamar Jackson ends up coming back, which this Odell Beckham signing seems to point that way, I think that the discount you can get on Dobbins right now is going to be gone by week 3 of next season. And absolutely the same thing with Breece Hall. I mean, we saw him be the RB1 in Dynasty after tearing his ACL because he was that good when he was healthy. We know it was a clean ACL tear. So I think that getting those injury discounts on these running backs while you still can, absolutely a huge value. And then over at wide receiver, I think right now, Amari Cooper is only 28. He's extremely productive. We love the Browns offense.
For saying Amari Cooper. Oh my God. Yes. Oh, his brand is so done. Nobody likes him.
He was so good last year.
I guarantee you this. I mean, let me know in the comments. In the comments of the show, let us know if you disagree with this. I don't think you could find a person, because he's no longer in the Cowboys, and he didn't exactly stand out in a way that inspired anybody last year in Cleveland. But he was good. But he was pretty good. There's something about his game where he's just not an inspirational figure. And now that he's on his 4th team, he's like a journeyman but productive. He's a very interesting case study. I don't think you could find a person who has Amari Cooper in their top 5 favorite receivers. I don't think you could. Like, I have 5 favorite receivers.
Maybe Amari Cooper's mom?
Maybe. I don't even think his mom. I guarantee his mom is like, Oh, I really love Amon-Ra St. Brown, and of course Devontae Adams, and I gotta say Justin Jefferson, just for posterity. And I think she's gonna go down the list. AJ Brown, she's gonna be like, I guess I have him at 7. I think that's what would happen. I love him this year. He's my favorite player to draft. He was my favorite value to draft in the middle rounds last year, and I'm going right back to him this year. And at ADP, I still don't think I could put him in my top 5. I know there's 5 receivers that I just get more excited about and I want to talk more about. He's just not that interesting to talk about, to think about, but it's a great point that, if you were to go, especially in a win now mode team, and you felt like you were maybe a receiver away, Amari Cooper should be your number 1 trade target.
Absolutely. I mean, he's our wide receiver 18 in our seasonal rankings right now. He's our wide receiver 37 in Dynasty. It's, it makes sense because of his age, but I think if with this Cleveland offense, we expect them to become more pass heavy now that they have a full offseason for Deshaun Watson. And then he's probably going to, I think, if you look at where Keenan Allen is right now in the Dynasty rankings, he's only a couple spots below Cooper, but he's 2 years older. I think you could get a very good 2 years of production out of Amari Cooper, and 2 years from now, he's still going to be valued in this similar tier, despite you getting those 2 years of very solid high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 production. And to me, that's a button that you just have to smash.
Thank you. Quarterback.
Now it's funny because I look at the rookies and I think that's where right now the consensus, I was like, let me look at keep trade cut just to see what the heck like the average dynasty player is thinking right now. And the rookies are ordered Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and then Anthony Richardson. And I was boggled that was still the case.
What?
So I guess I'm here to pound the table for Anthony Richardson, even though it seems completely obvious and well beaten path. Like, he's still like by far the highest upside.
You're talking about single quarterback leagues?
In Superflex.
In Superflex, it's a little more understandable because there is a lot at stake in Superflex. Like, I would think twice in Superflex, but not a single quarterback league. Oh my God. It's Anthony Richardson easily, right? So I'm on the quarterback rookie rankings right now. When I go to one quarterback, it's Anthony Richardson by far and away. And when I go to Superflex, it's still Anthony Richardson. Oh, man. Yeah. Like, it hurts. When Stroud was supposed to be the number 1, he was higher. But when Stroud is now potentially falling out of the top 3, his lifetime value rating goes down. But all the assumptions are still intact for Anthony Richardson. So the gap between him and Stroud has only grown in the last week.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I kind of was thinking, I was looking at our rankings and I was like, maybe we should, like, Bryce Young is almost a value where we have him ranked. And then I looked at what, the rest of the fantasy world was thinking, and I was like, holy crap, we need to keep pounding the table for Anthony Richardson because he's an athletic freak, number 1 athleticism score of all quarterbacks ever, if I'm not mistaken. And then on top of that, I think people want to compare him to Malik Willis because that's the prospect who came out last year who was the least developed as a passer. But in reality, his passing potential, the way he's already putting together progressions, NFL level reads, touch on his deep passes, he's already leaps and bounds ahead of where Malik Willis was last year. And that comp is definitely not doing him any favors. And, if you look at his player page, his best comparable is Josh Allen, because it's these guys who have the supernatural traits, total, like, just human freaks that are able to do things that no one else is able to do on a football field, that are going to get you perennially winning championships in your dynasty leagues. You need, like, if you drafted Josh Allen in your rookie draft, I guess 4 or 5 years ago, like, you've probably been on a pretty good run in your super flex leagues since you made that pick.
Right. So it's funny when you talk about, are there any good comps for this player with the 2.6% breakout rating? Right. Ronnie Bell. No, if I gave you Ronnie Bell's top 10 comps, you'd be underwhelmed, to say the least. Okay. If I tried to give you 10 comps for Deuce Vaughn, there would just be a bunch of blanks because they don't exist. You can't find anyone with that size profile and anything like that production profile that's anything close to Deuce Vaughn, and therefore it would just error out, right? So you have a bunch of guys you've never heard of for Ronnie Bell. You have a bunch of blanks for Deuce Vaughn. And when you look at Anthony Richardson, literally Josh Allen, Cam Newton, Colin Kaepernick. It's insane. It's wild. There you go.
There you have it, folks.
Yeah, there you have it. Like, I don't know. The worst one, maybe like Desmond Ridder. I don't know. It's great. They're good. Enjoy. Draft and enjoy. What about tight end? What tight end should we draft?
All right,
and
so
enjoy?
tight end, we're going to go back to the total opposite end of the spectrum, to a ridiculously boring guy. But I think that Hayden Hurst in Dynasty right now, he's still a little bit young for a tight end. He's on an offense where they have literally no receivers, and they spent all their draft capital getting up to pick a quarterback. And I think that Hayden Hurst could very easily see himself upwards of 15% target share, and Matt's already asleep, but he's a guy that will probably get you some production. And I think at the price that he's available right now, it's something to think about.
What? What'd I miss? Who'd you say? Hayden Hurst? Moving on.
Yeah, he's just a former first round pick, on a new team.
It's good, man. It's good, especially in best ball where you need to draft multiple tight ends and sometimes you get stuck. Makes sense. What is your preferred strategy for best ball in particular? Do you have one? Do you have a preferred like team structure? Are you a 2 QB or a 3 QB guy? Are you a 2 tight end or a 3 tight end guy? What's your disposition for best ball roster construction?
I like to think about it as like every pick, the same way we talk about the NFL draft, there's draft capital. In a best ball draft, there's draft capital. And ultimately, you want to balance out your draft capital across the position. So if you draft one of the really good quarterbacks early, you should stop at 2. If you wait, then you should probably lean towards getting a third one, because you're spending the amount of picks it takes to get to the same amount of draft capital is greater if you're using later picks. So, I mean, I've drafted teams where if you want to get funky, maybe you don't draft any tight ends at all until the last 4 picks, and you get 4 of these total punt tight ends. Your team is loaded everywhere else, and you're just rolling some dice at tight end week in and week out. I think with that said, my personal favorite is definitely the anchor running back. Get a running back in the first or second round, one of those absolute stud guys who you hope can carry you through the season, put up some monster performances in the playoffs, and then draft at least 4 wide receivers by the end of round 7, mixed in an elite quarterback or an elite tight end. Most of the time, I like to get one of those. And then probably by round 6 or 7, you're looking at a really solid core of receivers, a stud running back, and then a stud quarterback or tight end, kind of just filling in the gaps draft capital wise as the rest of the draft plays out, is how I like to do it in best ball.
We need to clip that. That should go on social media. That was very concise, succinct, even. Clip that. We'll put that on social media. Hell yeah. Social team over at Player Profiler. You know what to do. You know what needs to be done. Right? Give us just 2 or 3 guys in the double-digit rounds for best ball that you're targeting this year. Best ball. Yeah. Underdog. Yeah.
So this time of year, I think you have to be drafting, get overexposed to rookies right now, because as soon as they get drafted, as soon as that training camp drum starts beating, everyone's ADP is going to go up. I think right now, some of these guys like A-Chain, Kendre Miller, and Roschon Johnson, they've all fallen behind Israel Abanikanda because everyone got hyped over Abanikanda's 40 time. But I think you and I could both agree that there's much more potential for Devin Achane, Kendre Miller, or Roschon Johnson to give you more fantasy points this season. They're
potentially even Tajay Spears.
Definitely. And
I almost said Tajay Sharp. Remember Tajay Sharp on the Titans?
Oh yeah.
Once upon a time, kids, Tajay Sharp was an it guy. He had hype because he actually had a bunch of catches in mini camp wearing shorts where he had full extension catches, and these were videos shared on Twitter, and Tajay Sharp got steamed up, and I lost my mind. I was like, and one of the reasons why. What's crazy is one of the reasons why was like no one that size breaks out. Now half of the draft class looks like Tajay Sharp.
He was ahead of his time.
So if Tajay Sharp were to come out now, I would be way more amenable to him potentially breaking out. I would much more inclined to listen to any bullish takes on Tajay Sharp. Back then I was like, if he's not a true alpha, I'm not interested. It's crazy. Times have changed, man. Oh, baby. All right. So that's, the rookies I think we know are the way to go. What about a non-rookie? Give me a non-rookie for the double-digit rounds.
Okay. I think personally right now, Samaje Perine is someone that Billy and I both agree is a value pretty much everywhere. Javonte Williams' injury is very serious, and Samaje Perine, every time he's gotten a chance to start a game, right, for the Bengals, he was contributing. He was a top 15 running back pretty consistently. I think that he was offered the same amount of money by the Broncos and the Bengals, and then he said, no, see you guys, I'll go to Denver. So I think he wants to play for Sean Payton, where the running backs have always thrived in fantasy. There's going to be a good chunk of the season without Javonte Williams healthy. And I think that he's going to be one of those guys where we're going to look up. He's probably going to be, RB 18, RB 20 in fantasy points when we reach like week 6 or week 7. And it's going to be like, oh yeah, I should have drafted more of him.
I should have. And by the way, this is my favorite thing about man versus machine. It's not about the debates. It's not about the disagreements. You guys also talk about players you agree on. And when you and Billy align in a major way where it's actually you and Billy versus the field, that's also another interesting element of the man versus machine show. Those are the ones where I'm like, okay, I'm into Perine. The amazing thing is, if we go all the way back to Oklahoma, Perine commanded more touches than Joe Mixon when they were playing together at Oklahoma. It's just for some reason they ended up on the same team, and Mixon was the starter and the primary back, but they kept going back to Perine, even in the playoffs. Remember? Key possessions in the playoffs. And there just might be something to that. There might be something to that where we don't understand how the hell a team can feed Josh Jacobs this many touches, but there's something to it, right? There's something to some of these backs. And so sometimes it's like, well, they're going to pay him. This is a situation, and you just have to draft the guy and deal with it. That's it, and that is all. Now, I did mention earlier the injury finder. The injury finder gives a probability of a player missing 2 or more games, right? And we also have a fragility rating, which scores a player's likelihood of getting injured on any given touch, right? And that's important to have both of those, because if you have a huge workload and we factor that in, your projected workload, that's going to skew your probability of getting injured. If you don't have a huge workload, then your probability of getting injured goes down because you just have less incidents on the field where an injury could happen. Then if you look at just fragility rating, that's a way of being able to gauge the intrinsic durability or lack thereof of a player. And so if a player gets elevated, let's say McCaffrey goes down, he happens to have a high injury probability, but a lower fragility rating than Elijah Mitchell. So it's fascinating when you go to the Breakout Finder. Now, the breakout ratings are not up yet. Dario just got back from Columbia. Injury Finder is not up yet. They're not synced yet. Breakout Finder is. Breakout Finder is up and ready. The 2023 class available for download and to access. Injury probabilities and fragility ratings will be up soon. And follow us on Twitter at Roto Underworld or at PlayerProfiler on TikTok. I mean, there's all kinds of different places you can follow us to know when we're going to launch stuff. And what's interesting is on any given touch, we believe that Christian McCaffrey is more durable than Elijah Mitchell. But because McCaffrey's projected to get a lot more work, he's a higher probability of missing games with injury. And it's that nuance that I love about the Injury Finder. What do you like most about that particular app?
I think for me, I like the player comparison tool because it shows you can look at the fragility rating over time of two players side by side. So you have these trend lines over the years of, I don't know, like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, for example. And Keenan Allen is a guy who he was very injury prone early in his career, had a really nice, healthy stretch. And then last year, he had that really bad hamstring injury that caused him to miss like half the season. So his fragility rating jumped back up. And then Mike Williams has always been a guy who's struggled with some injuries, also had his healthiest year in 2021, missed some games last year again. I just love that chart that you get to see with the fragility ratings of both players side by side over time. I think that's probably my favorite feature of the app for sure.
You stole mine. Yeah, so I got to think of a new one. Like, what's my favorite one? What's a data point that matters most when you're predicting injuries? Give me a data point that maybe wasn't surprising to you, but is important nonetheless.
So I'll give you two. One is lower body injuries. We look at specifically what type of injury. Every injury that we have tracked, we not only look at, they missed this many games, but was it a knee, ankle, thigh, shoulder, concussion,
foot.
Yeah.
Foot's no good.
Turf toe,
foot
that's
injury.
the worst. And then, so looking at specifically lower body injuries is predictive. And then also the total number of tacklers. This is something that is actually really, really cool that we're able to keep track of this. But basically on every play, you can see how many, defenders were credited with a tackle. We look at how many, not just times have you gotten the ball, but how many guys have hit you. Because, a receiver making a catch on the sideline is not the same as a running back taking a carry up the middle and getting absolutely, smothered by two defensive linemen and a linebacker. So we look at the number of tacklers that player has faced, look at that not only in any given season, but over the course of their career. So these are all things that factor in. We look at how well have you survived the tackles that you've taken in terms of injuries, and that is what really drives the fragility rating. So a guy like Rashad Penny, who has never even stayed healthy enough to get a big workload, but still consistently gotten hurt, is going to lead the pack in fragility rating because he gets hurt a lot on relatively few touches for those injuries.
Hey, this is my Rashad Penny impression. Oh, ow!
Nice, okay. I love that.
I'm okay, everybody. I'm all right. I'm okay. It's going to be fine. Oh, I lost where we were. I just had a total. Oh man, I don't know where we are anymore. I don't know what's up, what's down. What about BMI? I always think of BMI mattering for injuries.
It does matter. Like when I was doing sort of the contextual research that kind of generated how this is calculated, you could see that for every position, there was a trend of, I think, generally lower BMI guys being more fragile, using our definition of fragility here. So that does get folded into our understanding of who has, been better at enduring the touches they've faced, who's been worse, and predicting what particular, health status they are going to have any given season.
Okay, interesting. What about the running back injury predictions? Anything there that jumped out at you? Surprising, not surprising? Both in terms of players that are more durable than you expected or less durable than you expected?
Yeah, I think that one thing that really stands out to me is we've been taking Austin Eckler's durability for granted. That guy has been a total stud when it comes to staying on the field and producing with just tons of touches. He hasn't, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's been, let's see, he didn't miss a game either of the last 2 seasons, and then the year before that he only missed he missed 6 games, but the year before that he played all the games. So 3 of the last 4 years he has not missed a game, and that's just rare to see.
I interviewed him about this, right?
I think that might have been before I was working for you, actually.
Yeah, I interviewed Austin Eckler, asked him about this, and he told us that his hamstring is never going to be the same. That it was a major tear, whatever it is, grade 3 or whatever, the highest grade hamstring, total tear of the muscle fiber, lots of scar tissue, and that essentially what's happened is it's now never going to be as strong as the other hamstring on the other leg. But what he's had to do is he does extra exercises and weightlifting for that particular hamstring, and he's tried to grow the muscle around the injury to compensate for the fact that it is degraded permanently because of the scar tissue.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he said that hamstring's never going to be 100% again. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're him. If you are an animal, if you're a beast, right? If you're in the gym constantly, right? I feel bad for some of these people. I feel bad that these professional workout influencers, David Goggins, Austin Eckler, I always feel bad for their partners, right? Their significant other. Because it's like, they have to go running with these guys. They have to go work out with these guys. These guys are going to be asking them because they can't always find buddies. They're going to be doing it at off hours. They need someone spotting them. And you have to realize, like, if you're going to be with Austin Eckler, that you need to be a gym rat too. Like, it's part of the deal. Like, if you want to spend time with him, you need to be working out. And if you're not, if that's not interesting, well, then you're not going to, it's not going to work out. Like, you're just not going to have enough in common. Like, you got to, like, so there's a very small set of people. Like, you have to love running. You have to love going out and running 10 miles if you're going to date David Goggins, right? Every day. Like, yeah. Or you have to love just living in the gym if you're dating Austin Eckler. And that's what's required. Because the other end of the spectrum is Devontae Parker, right? Where he's gonna pull a hamstring every training camp. He's going to miss games every year with lower body injuries. He's not going to give a damn whether or not he's compensating or not for the lack of connective tissue or strength. He's just playing out the contract, right? So there's a whole spectrum, and I'm surprised but not shocked about Austin Eckler's health, knowing how he's wired. This is why Cody has a dog rating. You want to know why Cody has a dog rating? You want to know why? That's why. That's why. That's why, man. Eckler gets after it. Listen, 10 years ago when I was getting into this, I thought things like dog ratings were total bullshit, right? I was like, who cares? Give me Devontae Parker, right? That's who I want. I want Devontae Parker. I don't want Amon-Ra St. Brown. I want the size, the speed. I want the wingspan, right? And then after enough years getting beaten down and having to deal with players that are not available, you start to appreciate the dog rating. And like, you know what? Amon-Ra St. Brown gets after it. And it's not like it was a secret. His dad came out and talked about it all the time. So if you missed it, then you weren't paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, that was a guy who, when I was at USC, I worked for the football team, so I got to see Amon-Ra St. Brown, Michael Pittman, Drake London, all those guys up close, and just the receiver drills. That was like, I don't think I knew in the moment that I was in the presence of that much future NFL greatness. We knew that they were really good for college, but the chances that they would all be this good in the NFL were pretty slim at the time, but just seeing them go on has been pretty sick. And I definitely think back to some of the catches those guys would make in practice. And I can't say I'm surprised entirely because they've been monsters since day one.
Well, I worked for the Northwestern football team in the 90s, so I did not have that same experience. We did have a guy named Dwayne Bates. Dwayne Bates had a cup of coffee in the NFL, and he was a great college receiver. I think he's up there in terms of Big Ten leaderboard, career leaderboard in the Big Ten. I think that Dwayne Bates is on that leaderboard. So that's cool, right? And, you know, we did play like Ohio State, and I get to see David Boston, players like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what that looks like. Okay, all righty then. All right. So you got basically, yeah, I mean, you got the whole spectrum there. You got really two alphas and a flanker, slot flanker who's wired like an alpha. It's funny, like, of all those guys, the guy that's least alpha in behavior is probably Drake London. And then the guy who's most alpha is the least physical looking is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Did you feel like all three of those guys had high dog ratings at USC?
Definitely St. Brown was on another level in terms of like, just you could see the laser focus in his eyes. I mean, Michael Pittman was a really nice guy. He was just a good dude. You could like walk up and kind of say hi to him, a little more approachable than Amon-Ra. And then Drake, I think Drake was probably the most reserved.
Yeah. And Michael Pittman at the Senior Bowl, he definitely had a big man on campus swagger to him. There are very precious few players that I won't approach. There were two players at the Senior Bowl I did not approach. One of them was Jalen Hurts because he was always surrounded by a crew of Alabama people and handlers, and you just couldn't get near him. So I tried, and I couldn't do it. I confronted Justin Herbert in a tunnel and got him to do a Sonic Truth. You remember that? Yeah, I was like, just say you're with the Sonic Truth podcast. I'll leave you alone. He's like, okay, I'm with the Sonic Truth. I'm like, what is this? What am I doing? Right? But then I looked over at Michael Pittman one time. I think I might have been talking to Chase Claypool, who is himself an incredibly impressive dude, right? Think about Chase Claypool, 6'4", 235, right? But I looked over at Michael Pittman and I was like, nah, I can't. I don't know. What am I going to say to that guy? He was just like, I don't know, the way the sun was shining off him. I was like, you know what? Like he had the Trojan helmet, you know, it was too much. I was like, you know what? I'm not, he's just too far above me. I can't, I'm not even, I'm going to shuffle off and, wait in line to talk to Troutman. I think that's what I did actually. What about speaking of Drake London and co, wide receiver injury ratings, anything there interesting?
I think that Hollywood Brown is one of those guys that, at least I don't think of him as for the injuries first and foremost. But then if you scroll down on his player page and look at his injury history, it is pretty concerning. And I think that is, one of those cases where the injury finder is going to catch on to that. It's going to say, hey, this guy has a relatively high injury risk. I'm pretty sure he's inside of the top. I can't count to 10 that fast, but I think he's inside the top 10 or 12 among wide receivers because he's going to get a lot of targets and he's had a lot of lower body injuries that have made him miss a game here, a game there. It's like hamstring, ankle, thigh. And he's just one of those guys that I knew he missed some games last season with that foot injury. And then if you start to put all the pieces together, you're like, oh crap, he's kind of not exactly the most durable dude.
It's true. You know who Billy and I really like, and is this another one where you're in our club here? The Rondale Moore Truther Club. Are you showing up to the meetings with us?
I think I might be late to the meetings every now and then, but he's got an even higher injury risk than Marquise Brown, unfortunately.
Well, what's the ADP difference? Let's go to Underdog. What's the ADP difference on Underdog?
Let's see. He's going about 90 picks later, so I think that
how many picks later?
90. Like about.
What the fuck are we talking about, Dario? What the fuck are we talking about?
Rondale, he was good when he was on the field last year. I like his skill set. I think whether or not they end up getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins is obviously going to be the defining feature for Rondale Moore this season. We saw as a rookie, he was kind of used as a scat back in the passing game effectively. I think the new coaching staff is going to have a big say on whether or not he keeps doing those kind of like worthless for fantasy routes that Cliff Kingsbury had him doing, or if he's going to get utilized more down the field. But it's kind of hard to be too high on the Cardinals offense this season with, Kyler Murray set to miss probably at least 6 games would be.
You mean it's going to be hard to be too low? You can't be too low on the Cardinals offense. You're very low on the Cardinals offense.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to be high also because you're like,
it's hard to be high on the it's hard to be bullish on the Cardinals this year. Absolutely. Here's the thing with Rondale Moore. Why I think Rondale Moore could be the singular gem in this particular dumpster that happens to also be on fire. That's a way to say dumpster fire without using the cliche. It's a dumpster that happens to be in flames. All the Cardinals really have to do is not go wide receiver with pick 34. That's it. If they don't go receiver in the beginning of the second round, then Rondale Moore will be a value. He'll be a value via an injury to Marquise Brown, a trade to DeAndre Hopkins. All you need to lock in value with Rondale Moore in the double-digit rounds on Underdog is for Arizona not to go receiver. That's it. They just, in the second round, they pass on receiver. Lock in your Rondale Moore profits.
Yeah, I like
and
this.
The odds are they're not going to go receiver.
I like this comment from Fantasy Football Garage about how Dortch is like an even more discounted version of Rondale Moore. He was pretty solid when he was on the field too, and all these hypothetical situations about creating value for that receiver room apply to him as well. He's wide receiver 102 on Underdog, whereas Rondale's wide receiver 69. I think
that's nice.
They're
though.
Obviously
listen. There's actually multiple players that you should be drafting on Underdog on the Cardinals, and neither one of them are going early. That's not a place that you get positive expected value, is mining the Cardinals. Right? That's not it, right? Marquise Brown? Marquise Brown is he, would you consider him undraftable for you?
I think, especially when it comes to best ball, no one's undraftable because you want to have a portfolio.
I hate bad offenses. And now we're hearing he's more injury prone than anyone realized. Partly because of the BMI.
It's definitely tough. Let's see. I'm looking at the tier of wide receivers he's in. He's going like just ahead of Mike Evans, Kadarius Toney, Traylon Burks, Deontay Johnson in that wide receiver tier. I think that probably. I think you just kind of got to mix around evenly. He's not, to me, significantly
Dario.
worse, but I do think I'm probably leaning toward, for example, Burks, Deontay Johnson, Toney. I mean, Kadarius Toney. You could make a whole episode just about him and his injuries and all that stuff. But again, his upside is pretty tantalizing. It's just a weird part of the draft, that tier of wide receivers. I don't have like the strongest of takes.
I would
at the
never
moment.
draft Marquise Brown in that zone. Never. Ever, 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 ever. Essentially, Mike Evans is in the same situation, and Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer. What the hell are we talking about here? I don't even like Mike Evans. But like the moon and the stars are aligning to avoid Marquise Brown at all costs in fantasy. Not that anyone's even talking about Marquise Brown. I can't even believe he's in that tier. But it's true.
Yeah, I mean I think people are. It's the
Dortch
speculation
is almost a better value
Hopkins.
than even more, because if Brown gets hurt and Hopkins is traded, oh baby. And you mentioned that Moore is also high on the fragility list. So now it's almost like maybe the answer was Dortch all along. That's value. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to lock. If you could lock in 100 targets at the end of an underdog draft, I mean, Greg Dortch is your guy. That's the possibility. That's the highest probability of hitting 100 targets than anyone else in that back of the draft swath of draft slots. Think about it. 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 Greg Dortch truthers unite. Get us out of here, Dario. Give us your truther.
So this is, I don't know if you can consider him totally a truther because he's a former number 1 overall pick, but I think that you guys should all be stashing Jameis Winston on your dynasty rosters while he's still a backup. He's kind of rehabbing that back injury. He decided to come back to New Orleans because he said, I just want to get a full healthy season under my belt, keep learning under Derek Carr, getting another veteran presence. But every time we've seen him start in fantasy, he's been a solid contributor. Not very many quarterbacks have a 5,000-yard season under their belts.
Winston does?
Winston does. Admittedly, the year he threw 30 picks, but he was the number 8 overall quarterback in fantasy that season. He's still pretty young. He's 29. He's not you would think he's older because he was drafted in 2015, but he was very young when he was drafted. And I think he could end up having that sort of maybe Andy Dalton late 30s or even better. That was a disservice to Jameis to compare him to Andy Dalton, but he's going to have, I think, some fantasy relevance in the next 3 years. He's going to be able to give you games with 15 or 20 PPR points at quarterback, and he's basically free right now.
5,109 yards in 2019. And here's the best part. This is the part that I really like. 250 rushing yards, 20.5 fantasy points per game. That's Jameis Winston. He's not dead yet.
That's the last time he was able to start a full season. And I'll never forget when he threw 5 touchdowns in week 1 to light up the Packers when he was supposed to be the Saints starter last year. Torn ACL, back injury. I think he's still got something in him.
Bye, everybody.